The weather has played a critical role in the success of many military operations, perhaps none more important than D-Day, the first day of the Allied invasion to retake Europe in World War II. This Friday, June 6th, is the anniversary of D-Day, so I thought I'd take a look at how the weather forecast factored in. Now, in early 1944, Allied commanders had decided on June for the invasion, and based on the tides and the phases of the moon, the best time was between the 5th and the 7th. And Eisenhower had tentatively chosen the 5th if the weather cooperated. Very strict minimum weather conditions were laid down. Bomber and fighter aircraft required certain sky cover. The Army wanted firm, dry ground. The Navy needed good visibility and, of course, limited waves and swell in the English Channel. 3 forecast teams, 2 British and 1 American, worked independently and then met to reach a consensus that was presented to General Eisenhower. Now remember, this was 1944. No satellite imagery or weather radar, no computer models. Even a 2-day forecast was a huge challenge. Now, the weather pattern the first few days of June 1944 was dominated by a big storm in the North Atlantic, high pressure west of Spain, and between the two, a moist southwest flow sent occasional bouts of clouds and rain through the English Channel. Now, here's a modern-day reconstruction of weather conditions early on the morning of June 4th, 1944. This is when Eisenhower had to decide whether to stick with his pre-chosen date of the 5th. Now, forecasters told him that another round of rain and wind would likely sweep over the channel on the 5th, but a short break would follow the next day. And so based on that advice, Eisenhower postponed the invasion by 24 hours. As it turned out, the weather was poor on June 5th. The invasion would have been next to impossible then. The weather on the 6th wasn't ideal, but it was tolerable. Seas were choppy and skies gray that morning to greet the largest amphibious landing force ever assembled. But the sun came out at times in the afternoon, and nature cooperated enough so that the Germans, who expected an invasion only during a stretch of fair weather, were surprised. Their high command had relaxed, and their airplanes and naval vessels were not ready. Looking back, Eisenhower wrote, "I thank the gods of war we went when we did." 11 years later, in June 1955, Eisenhower, then President of the United States, gave the commencement address at Penn State. Recognizing the importance of a good forecast, he had consulted with Penn State meteorology legend Dr. Charles Hostler, who gave the go-ahead to have the ceremony outdoors, despite the threat of rain. That forecast worked out too. Paul will be back with the extended forecast next.